All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in again, checking out my stream. A lot of you guys got upset that I didn't show how I converted my last myfitness touchscreen. I just kind of put up a couple videos of the after conversion, really because I wasn't sure I would even be able to convert it. So I was just doing it for myself. And then when it worked, I posted a couple videos. And a lot of you were like, hey, how the heck do you do this? So I went to eBay and bought a second monitor. Don't even need it. I'm just doing this for you guys. I guess I can use it as a computer touchscreen monitor later if I want. But basically what this conversion is going to get you is the ability to hook up an external video source. That could be a Chromecast, anything with an HDMI port, a Google device, a Fire TV. A lot of that stuff lets you get to YouTube. And there's a lot of exercise videos on YouTube. So, you can totally do away with the subscription. What this thing basically is today is a large tablet, an Android tablet. But what sucks is that myxfitness locks down the Android device that's inside of here. So you can't load your own apps or anything like that. And they do that to force you to pay their subscription to use this monitor. I'm no Android expert. I'm sure somebody that's really good could probably crack that puppy and open it up. But basically what they do is they manage it almost like if you have a work or a company phone. Most companies will take over management of that phone. And really, if you, remove the password or anything, it doesn't matter. They have full control over it. The same thing is here. myxfitness treats these like a bunch of company phones out in the field, and they lock it down so you can't do anything on it. So this conversion is going to tear out basically that Android board, since we can't do anything with it. And we're going to reuse the touch screen components and the LCD screen, so you can use it for something else. Now, the touchscreen will not work on a Fire TV or a Chromecast or a Google device or some items like that don't support external touch screens. But if you hook this up to an old laptop or maybe a Raspberry Pi or something like that, the touchscreen will still function if you hook it up. So when we're done converting this, we're basically just going to turn this into a touchscreen monitor. Since you already paid for the hardware, might as well get some use out of it, whether you use it on your computer or you do like I did and, Chromecast from the phone or something like that. While you're exercising, you can still get use out of this. It's a pretty well-built monitor, and it matches the color of the bike and everything. So rather than throw your own TV on the bike, converting this and reusing it and getting some of your money's worth out of it is better than just tossing it. Some things you'll need is the display adapter from Amazon, couple tools, a little Phillips and flathead screwdriver, a soldering iron. I don't remember. I converted the last one a long time ago. It's not plug and play. I'll look in there and see if there's anything we can do to at least make it sort of plug and play for those of you that can't solder, don't know how, don't have the equipment. But really, to do it right, you need to do a little bit of soldering inside here to reuse things like the power input and stuff like that. Sorry for the reflection there. You've got my overhead camera, and usually that's facing me, and I can see when I get new subscribers. My little screen there will ding and tell me I got a new subscriber at my desk. So really appreciate if you guys subscribe. You can click the little icon of me. I think it's down here somewhere, and subscribe. That would be awesome. I know everyone wants you guys to subscribe on YouTube. You're probably numb to it, but really does let me know that these videos are useful, and the little ding I hear, when I'm eating dinner or something, is really cool. So it lets me know that, put some time in it and keep doing this for you guys. All right, let's get going here. I'll open this up live with you. I don't remember what I did on the last one, so I'm going to kind of discover things here with you guys. Oh, I did want to show you real quick that hold power on here. It is a myxfitness device. We'll let it boot up. I don't even remember what it looks like. We had myxfitness for maybe a month or 2 or maybe 3 and canceled it. And there it is. So I got this one off of eBay. So they must have factory reset it before they sent it to me. So I'll go ahead and yank the power. And we'll get going on this. I will fast forward through some of the boring stuff, like unscrewing all these screws here. All the way around the edge. And then these 2 that I'll be removing. And I'll go ahead and do that and probably fast forward here so I don't bore you guys. All right, I couldn't get all of the screws out. The screwdriver isn't really magnetic. Probably help to have a little magnetic screwdriver to get those out. But I'll flip it over and probably lose some of these. Yep, I only got one out. Nope, here's another one. And another one. All right. So to open this, it's screwed together, one, and then it snaps together. So, like I said, once you get these screws out, I've got all the focus on. I'm probably going to shut that off in a minute. It always annoys me. But you'll want to pry on the bottom. So if you do damage the frame here, it's not obvious. Oh, butterfingers. Let's see if I can. There it goes. So now you just have to go around the outside. Sounds like it's breaking, but it is not. Once you get enough of it, you probably don't need to pry as much. Go around the sides. There we go. Let me see. I'm just taking a peek at here, seeing if anything. You might have to undo some plugs and stuff to be able to fully open it. You see the wires there, so you can unplug. And this is the video cable. We have a new one that comes with our new board, but I'm just going to remove this tape in here. And keep all these material tapes that you remove, because you can reuse those to hold the new wires down. All right, and then we've got this other wire over here. This, I believe, is for the backlight. It is. So we'll unplug that, and now it lets us open it up, and we can see inside. So I'll flip this around so you guys can see what's in here. This is the power board. Really, that's almost all it is. There's some USB on here and stuff, but I keep this power board in so that you could plug things in the bottom on those USB ports, use them as charging ports for your phone or something while you're working out. So those, I believe, will still work when we're done. Then there's power output here that feeds this Android board. And then these are the control cables for the USB. There's another USB port over here. I, on my other one, removed this and put my own USB port on here, and actually had a USB hub inside of this. But I ended up, when you use a Google or a Fire TV or something like that, the USB port's kind of pointless. So we're going to do the basic. We're going to get this thing so it's usable again. And there's some other things in here, like a Wi-Fi antenna. So there's a little antenna. This thing also has a camera in it. Like I said, it's basically a big tablet. So there's another antenna going over here. You don't really need it, I guess, unless if you put a Raspberry Pi in here, you could probably reuse these antennas. I think this one's Bluetooth. But I just removed all this stuff. Again, keep that tape if you can. Come in handy later. Again, built like a giant tablet. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is just, like I have been doing, start removing all this stuff. You're not going to need the microphone anymore. This actually had a microphone in it, a headphone jack. The power board, the speakers we're going to reuse. Then there's buttons over here that, again, if you're good with a soldering iron, you can reuse these buttons on the new board. But to make it really easy for you guys to convert, I'm going to abandon these buttons and not use them, because the new display controller comes with its own set of buttons, and you can get as creative as you want with mounting those buttons. I'll show you those in a little bit. You can drill individual holes so it looks a little neater on the back, or you can drill one hole and just put the board on the outside on the rear. That's the easiest. Like I said, we'll cover that in a minute. And there's a camera here. So this is actually a camera and a little light to show you that the camera's on. I don't think they use the camera in their setup, but it's there. There's another microphone at the top. So there's a microphone here, a microphone here. And that's about all that's in this thing. So, I didn't have no need for the cameras or any of that stuff. So I'm going to remove all of this extra stuff. I'll fast forward through some of it. Okay, so now we're on to, I believe I kept this cable, the screen cable. It goes to the LCD monitor. So there's two parts to this screen. Let me show you that. This is more for the geeky peeps. This here is actually the touch screen component. This controls the touch screen. This ribbon cable goes up to the glass in the front for the touch screen. And there's actually a cable that comes in this kit that you could use, and it will turn this into a USB port. So if you use this on your PC or a laptop or Raspberry Pi or something, you can still use that touchscreen. Then this is the video cable, and then this is the LED backlight. And this should, if I remember correctly, I haven't even opened the box yet, but this should connect right up to the new backlight controller board that's in the Amazon box. Well, I pulled the whole connector out of the board. You gotta be careful with these. Locked in there pretty good. Usually they come on right out. All right, there we go. All right, so I'll finish removing this Android board that we don't need. There's a screw over here for this ground, the shielding wire for the video cable, and that'll let you remove the video cable. Again, you got to be kind of careful with these, because if you pull on the wires to unplug them, you'll sometimes pull these wires right out of the connector, and there's really no easy way to get them back in or fixed. So really, I probably should have used a pair of needle nose pliers here. This. Okay. Need microphones. Okay, so a few more things on this board. This is the Android board. The power in. These are glued in, so these will be a little tough to get out. And I did on that exactly what I told you not to do. Don't pull on the wire. And then these are all, microphones and speaker and the little BIOS battery for the Android device. This is it. This is basically a full Android device on a board. I don't think it's necessarily custom to myxfitness, but like I said, they're locking it down. And if you look at with this plugged in, you'll see there's 5 volts and 12 volt DC coming through this cable. Oh, and look at that, I pulled one of the wires out like I told you I would do. Again, use needle nose pliers to remove these cables. But this one I'm going to end up cutting anyway, and this is where the soldering comes in to power the new screen board. I know this looks crazy, but once you strip all this stuff out, you want to keep these speaker wires. We'll be able to reuse them on the new controller. So that's these two. And then the rest of this, can go, because that's what they have locked down. And now we're left with a little less. Again, this headphone jack, if you want to get really crafty, you could technically solder these to the new board. But I just whack it because I don't have any intention on using headphones. All right, this wire is not needed either. Okay, so you should be down to this. Again, this USB port isn't going to function either. You can leave it and it might be powered, I don't remember. So you could use this side USB port to charge your phone or whatever. There's also a couple USB-C ports on the bottom that you could use. I'm just going to leave it for now and see if it works in the end as a charging device. So you should be down to this. You have the speakers, the speaker wires, the power wires, the power board, and that's all that's left in here. Now, on the LCD display, let me move this. On the LCD display, you should have left the video cable, the backlight or the LCD lighting cable, and the touchscreen control board. And this is actually a USB connection. And now let's see what's inside of the controller that you bought off of Amazon. So that's this. Inside here is the USB cable I told you about. You can actually reuse this cable, you just have to cut it. You have to cut these last two ground wires off, and then this will plug right into that touchscreen board, and you can use this as into a laptop and still use this thing as a touchscreen. So that comes in there. And then there's two other bags. And this one right here this is the controller for the LED backlight. So that little tiny plug that I said you want to keep from the screen, that's actually going to go plug right in here. No soldering or anything. And then the control board goes in here. Inside here is the new, see, they give you a video cable as well. You could use this one right to the back of the LCD if you want, or you just unplug this. I believe they were the same. I think I just reused the old one. I did. So you unplug this, and it's the same connector. Just remember that these only go on one way. So when you unplugged it, there's a pin 1 marking on here. Let's see if turned off autofocus. But there's a pin 1 piece of paint here, and on the old monitor, you can see it's white on this one, but it also shows pin 1. And when I plug this pin 1 with the connectors to your left, pin 1 is on the top left. So you have to make sure that you get that new cable in the same way. So we're not really gonna use it. Put that to the side. This little rainbow lead actually goes to the lighting controller here. That's not plugged in all the way. I'm just kind of showing you what it looks like. And then this is the push button board I talked about. Like I said, you could, if you're good with a soldering iron, you can trace out these wires, or just solder the button wires, the original buttons on the touchscreen, to these locations that match. I believe on the original screen, there's just volume up, down, and power. So you don't get the menu button and the select and all that. So you would still have on off and volume up and down, but you could use those as yeah, maybe auto button, and that's about it. Kind of need this because it has navigation buttons, left, right. Select the auto for setting the video. That's all there is to this board. See if I remember right. This was not used. And then the speaker connections are actually, there's a few different connections on this board if you buy it. I'm going to go ahead and remove this for now. So there's speaker connections down here for the left and right speakers. And you can see on the back of the board, it tells you these two pins are left and these other are right. And those little speaker connectors, if I remember correctly, will still plug right in there, even though this is a 4-pin connector. The two 2-pin connectors still fit in there. Otherwise, you can slide this plastic piece off, and they'll still plug into the board. Then this gives you the option of, you could pipe this headphone jack to the old headphone jack, like I said before. If you're really wanting to make this thing look original, you could solder the old headphone leads. Here, you can remove this and solder the leads from the original headphone. I'm sorry, that's this one. This is the headphone. This is audio input. If you do an RGB or a DVI connection, then you can inject audio input here, and then that'll come out the speakers or the headphone. But we're going to use the HDMI. I think most of you are. The main goal of this quick and dirty conversion is tear out the old, throw this in, power it, plug something into the HDMI port, and you have a monitor that you can use. All right, so let's move this stuff out of the way. I'll bring this guy back in. And so this this guy runs off of 12-volt DC. So we need to plug in the power. I need to figure out again which two of these wires were plus and minus 12-volt DC. Then we cut them, and I'm actually going to, this is where the soldering comes in, negative and positive. I'm going to solder them right to that connector. If you don't know how to solder, you could drill a hole maybe in here and run a 12-volt DC connection to this and have two feeds in here, or you can maybe tear this entire board out if you wanted to. And I mean, some of you are feeling really crafty. You could cut all of these holes in the bottom here. Yeah, it's not really anywhere good to put it. But you could cut holes somewhere, I reckon, and have all the ports outside. again, I'm doing this quick and dirty because I didn't want them to stick me with this hardware I couldn't use. Let's see, I think I just trying to recall where I put the other board. I don't think I cut these out and reused this space on the last one I converted. You have to keep this area clear here where the square is. That's where the mounting bracket goes. But you have all of this and all of this that you can use. I may have over here. So, no, because the speaker wires are here. I must have cut these out. So, I guess I'll do that. I will get my cutoff tool and I will strip probably have to remove them all, or at least these three. Really don't want to have to do that. It's more work for you guys, but that's the only place where it'll allow me to reuse these speaker cables. Or if the speakers aren't that important to you, you can just hook up one speaker, but you want to try and make this as usable as possible for you guys. Okay, so really, I've thought about this, and for you guys to convert this at home, you're more than welcome to go above and beyond, but I'm going to go with super easy, so you guys can easily convert this without having to cut all this stuff out. And that's what I did on my other one. I cut all of these standoffs out, and I think I double-sided like some 3M, the Ultra VHB, very high bond, or UHB, double-sided tape, and I stuck that down in there. But to keep this simple, as long as you keep everything under this lip, nothing protruding up, nothing will short out against the LCD screen. So I think what I'm going to do, and the internet's going to hate me here, but I'm actually going to use some good industrial black hot glue. And I'm going to affix this board right on top of these existing standoffs. That gives me enough clearance here for the screen to go back on and not short out. Also leaves me a good room here to put a little dongle or something. I clear over here for the metal mounting bracket that'll go down in there. One of these speaker wires I don't think will make it all the way over there. I'll have to pull it out probably and see if I can get it to fit. It'll stretch over, but it's right in the way of that big metal bracket that goes there. So we would have to either buy a little extension cable for this, or cut these and extend them if you want both speakers to work. So again, I'm going to go very basic here just to show you guys how to do it with very basic tools. So again, if you wanted to do this with no soldering, one speaker working, and video works with whatever HDMI you put in there, you could remove this board. You can feed that 12-volt wire up in here, plug it in here. I'm going to hot glue this down. We could hook up one speaker. and then the video cables and the other boards to get the LCD to work. And that would work to get you video. Again, I'm trying to make it look clean from the outside, so I'm going to reuse this board. I have to discover which of these wires are plus and minus 12 volts. I'm going to solder them on the bottom of this board. Then I'm going to hot glue this in place versus cutting all those out. Like I said, if you wanted to go above and beyond and cut these out and then double side it down at the bottom, you can do that. Like I said previously, you could have reused some of these buttons, reuse this headphone jack. A lot of stuff can be reused, but again, I'm trying to make this as basic as possible for those of you that just want to keep this monitor and get some money out of it, since you did pay for it. The bikes weren't cheap. So next I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to find which of these wires, I think it's sets of 3, I think it's like 3 negative, 3 positive, 12 volt, and then the last 2 are plus and minus 5 volts. So really all I need is one 12 volt wire on one negative 12 volt wire, and then I'll solder those on there. So I'm going to find those with a test meter. I'm going to power up this board, measure the various pins, find my plus and minus 12 volts, snip them, and I'll show you which ones they are here in a second. Okay, so I figured out which ones are positive and negative. Let's zoom in here a little. So when looking at the bottom of the connector with these metal pieces up, this is the top where the glue was and it was in the board. So flipping it with the metal pieces up, the far left 2 were plus 12 volt DC, and then the following 2 were negative 12 volt DC. So I snipped the very first one, I skipped one, and snipped the third one. The first one is positive, the third one is negative. So the first one is positive here. I'm going to strip it, and I'm going to solder it up to the center pin back here. And then the negative is going to go right here. So I will strip those 2 wires, heat up my soldering iron, and show you that. Okay, so I've got my positive lead, my negative lead, and going to clean up my tip here a little, and then get some solder on these 2 leads. And even though these already have solder on them, I don't know if it's different type than mine. It's always good to get a little bit of fresh on there. And then again, at the very end here is the positive, and this is the negative lead. So really, that's it for the soldering part. Wasn't that bad if you soldered stuff up before. It's pretty painless. If you haven't, you know, a lot of people try and use it like glue or like you're welding, and That's really not the case. You just tin both areas and then reheat them up, stick them together. So again, like I said earlier, I'm going to make this easy for you guys. The internet's going to hate me, but I'm going to hot glue this in here. Let me just guide this wire. And this is where those little black pieces of tape will come in handy. So I'm going to stick this guy here first. Kind of back where it was. And then to keep this connector out of the way, I'm just going to grab one of these pieces of tape that I kept earlier. And so what I'm going to do with a little bit of kind of industrial hot glue is I'm not using this port, so I'm going to put a little glue to this standoff in here. I'm also not using the headphone ports on mine, so I'm going to put a little glue there as well as here, here, and here. Just careful not to goober up the connectors there, because you're going to need those. And the hot glue I use is this black stuff. Got it off of Amazon. And I'll try and put a link to this hot glue too. I really like this stuff. You know, the usual clear hot glue doesn't usually play well, or it doesn't stick well. This stuff seems to solidify a little more than the usual clear stuff. So I'm going to put a little dab there. There. Again, don't hate me, internet. Usually not a big fan of hot glue. Okay, we'll let that set up a little bit. And then get to assembling and testing. So at this stage, if you didn't want to, did I leave it powered up? I did. If you didn't want to keep this board, you could just run the power cable up into here. But again, I wanted to keep this board so that the original plug snapped in the back. I can remove it later if I wanted. I guess since I've got it powered up and forgot about it, let's see if we have power on the input. And we do. Plus 12 volts. Now our new board should be able to be powered up. And we just have to add in here all of the other little boards. And so this board, what I did on the last one is I drilled a, let me zoom out here. I drilled a hole over here, and then I kind of balled that up so it fit in, like, I think it was like a 3/8 inch hole. And then I fed that through, and then I attach this on the outside here. So the buttons were just out on the back. But I really, since I did my other one, I've never had to touch this. Never had to turn it on, turn it off. The board defaults to on. So for this one, I'm going to try and just see what happens if I totally leave this out. So that only leaves then this board. Which goes here. And it says inverter on this board, but it's not really an inverter. It's more of a LED driver for the LED backlight on the screen. And that screen will plug in here. I'll show you that in a second. Still kind of waiting for this hot glue to fully set up. I think we're pretty close. And then the speakers you can plug in here, or you might need to solder these on there. I could have swore I reused these connectors in the last one. I wonder if they changed the design. These pins look a little bigger on this board than my previous one. So that might be something we have to solder on there to reuse these speaker wires. But let's try out the video. See if we can at least get this screen to come on. Bring in the screen that we took off earlier. Just kind of lay it here. And this little guy is the one that's going to go right here. On the new board. So now this controls the backlight. And we can either double-sided tape that there, just making sure that none of this stuff comes in contact with the metal. Or I'm probably going to put it down in here somewhere with a little more hot glue. And then there's this the cable that we took off the original board. Remember, the pin 1 goes here. And it should, like I said, my last one, plugged right in. So this little ground wire would normally go on an open terminal here that's grounded. But again, since we hot glued, we can either leave it open because it is grounded on the other side. And that ground gets to the other side by these guys here from the original board. But if you're not keeping the original board, you can just find a little screw that fits the RGB and just screw it in there. Or I think even with a pair of needle nose pliers, this will unscrew out, and then you can put this behind that and screw it back in. I'll show you that anyway. And just skipping some steps here, but let's just see if it works. So I've got this plugged in. I've got the backlight plugged in. I haven't even started anything with the touch screen. Really, that's just modifying this USB cable and then plugging it in here. And then you'll have a working touchscreen. But we have the video cable hooked up to the new video driver board. Backlight's ready to go. I'm going to flip this over and just see if it works for the sake of the video. Let's plug in some power. Attention, no signal. That's actually coming from that that new board we put in. So let's give it a signal. Let me keep this here. And I think I've got a little Chromecast laying around. So we'll try and plug that in there. And again, this uses 5 volts. That USB plug, I did try it over there a minute ago. It is not powered up. You can get 5 volts off of one of these other boards or these other pins here, and you can run it and drive it. Or again, you can run another cable up the bottom if you're wanting to really be basic, and you can plug that 5 volt power into there. Let me see if I have a cable here, and we'll give it a try. Okay, for the sake of testing, I'm just going to power it externally on my little power cable I have. Okay, so now we have Chromecast going into the HDMI port, driving the monitor. Of course, touchscreen isn't going to work. It won't work with a Chromecast or something like that. I don't know if this is on my network to be able to test it. Let's see if I can cast something to it, like YouTube. Apparently not. I don't have this Chromecast on my network. Not showing up for me to cast to it. But you can see that it is working on the with the screensaver there, and if I pull the power here, and it should, the screen will automatically turn on and off. That's why I said I don't think we really need those external buttons if you don't want to mount them. When whatever you have plugged in the HDMI boots up, it should automatically turn on the screen. And now you could technically throw this together as is and have a working monitor, but because these pins are different in this board, I'm gonna have to come back to that, solder those in. So that means more soldering for you guys. Sorry. Again, I thought those 2-pin connectors plugged right in there, and they don't. Okay. Well, let me unplug this and kill the power. And I will leave this with screen, and we'll this guy. And then I guess I can show you this right now. Is that this is stamped on the board 5 volt. I can barely see it from this angle. Try not to get my head in there too much. 5 volt data and ground. And that's how this cable that came with the board from Amazon. It's 5 volt data and ground, but it has these 2 extra grounds, and this connector is too wide. Again, you could, if you're crafty, you can remove these pins and steal the connector from the original board that we pulled. You can pull that connector from the original board and reuse it, but what I am going to do here for keeping it simple is a pair of scissors. Internet's gonna get me on this one again, but I can cut those last 2 pins off actually, and this connector will still fit in there and the USB will still function. So you want to make sure you're only getting these last 2 wires. So now all you have left is 4 pins. Actually whack these. Now this will actually plug in there, and if I hook this up to my computer, it will actually recognize it as a touchscreen. I don't know if you heard that. It bing bonged. And yep, it is actually moving the mouse on my computer here where I'm doing the recording. So that's all that's needed to make the touchscreen work. Just trim that down, plug it in. Windows recognizes it. Might be a little more work on a Raspberry Pi or something like that. I've tried to get it to work with Fire TV, and you really can't get too much access to their OS to be able to make a touchscreen work with it. At least I haven't had luck or patience. All right, so we'll put this back to the side. And I do want these speakers to work, so I'm going to have to do some soldering here and probably extend these wires. So I'll do a little bit of that off camera. I'm going to end up, so I can get in here with a soldering iron, I'm going to remove this connector. It actually, nothing holds these connectors to the boards usually. You just have to be careful. Again, I would use nose pliers here. I'm being lazy since I'm already recording and using what I got. But I would grab the edge and go back and forth and pull up on this plastic piece to get it off the board. Because if you just pry here, you could cut a trace on the board by accident. Let's see if I can get it without screwing up. I will remove this. Side connector housing. That gives me a little more room to some wires to these pins. So I'll be able to strip these back. Yeah, these are bigger pins on this model. Definitely does not fit in that original connector. So I'll strip these back and solder 2 there. I'll extend these with some of the microphone wires from the old boards. Probably take this guy, get rid of the microphone. And then I'll have a piece of wire to extend these and get them over here and attach them as well. And with the speakers hooked up here, I should be able to throw it back together and have sound and everything. I will show you too how to get some 5 volts to power whatever it is that you plug in this HDMI port. Usually you can take a USB cable, you can usually cut the end off, and there'll be a red and black wire within that USB cable. You can get rid of all the other wires, keep the red and black, and that's your 5 volts plus and minus in. And then we will find on this board somewhere, there will be 5 volts out constantly. It's coming to these pins on the wire as well. And then we can attach the USB wires there and then power everything internally. So when we're all done, we should have just a power cable that goes in, and that's it. And then your Wi-Fi to whatever dongle you put in here, Fire TV, Chromecast, whatever. You'll have working speakers. I probably will plug this in, and I believe the volume is adjustable from this board. I will set the volume to 100% so that the device controls the volume. These speakers aren't super loud anyway. And then I'll pull this back out. But again, you can permanently mount this if you want access to it. I'm going to set this board up the way I want and just leave this out so I don't have to drill any holes anywhere or deal with hiding this board or attaching it in here or anything like that. Okay guys, I've soldered up one of these already. Used a little piece of tape to hold it down. I've added my extension wire. And if you notice, I like cutting the wires at offset so that when they're soldered up, one piece of heat shrink can go over this and we don't have to worry about these shorting out because they're offset. So you'll see there's one solder joint there and one up here. So I left on this one the red long, black short. On this other wire I had the black long, red short. That gets them the offset. These wires are so thin that I don't even think I'm going to bother with heat shrink. They're just speaker wires. So what I'm going to do is just run these back here. And then I'm just going to cover up my soldered together wires with a piece of that material tape. Since they're offset, they're not going to short out. And they're only speaker wires anyway. And then we can put this back here. More of this material wire. This material tape. Tape down these wires. I will solder these up. I've already tinned them with some solder. Same thing with the pins. Let's get this in first. Clean my tip a little bit. Some flux on there. And let's. Oh, I had too much Mountain Dew today. Shaking. There we go. And then the red. Yeah, but a little strand hanging off there. Thought I turned that good enough. Well, that's the cool thing about you doing this along with me. You get to see my screw ups too. On the struggle bus here. What the heck? Alright, we'll get it down here. I tin that up good enough. Evidently not. Let's try this again. There we go. And these little wires are Tough to work with without tools. There we go. And we'll tape that slack down with a piece of that tape that we saved. Okay, so we've got the speaker wires landed. I'm just going to do this. Since I've got the hot glue gun out. I will be cursing myself later when I go to remove that. All right. And then on this board, I was able to find some 5 volts. Let's zoom in here. So, oh, it wasn't actually on this board. It was on the new board we got. Let's try and focus a little. And actually, it's right here. This unused tab is +5, and then one of these ground connections here is the -5. So what I'll do is I'll find a USB cable that I can use with my Chromecast here. Yours may be USB-C or something else. This one happens to be micro USB. So I'll find a micro USB cable and I'll cut the end off, the USB end. I'll put the red lead there and the black lead there. And then that should give me a USB cable to go in here. Plug this guy in. And that should give power to this at all times. So when you power off, usually you'll want a Fire TV or something like that. When you power it off, it'll kill the video and then it will shut off the display as well. Again, if you're not using the buttons like I'm trying to do here. Okay, so I've got oh, forgot I was zoomed in on you guys. So I've got this just a USB charging cable I found. I'm gonna give it enough slack to plug something in there. Yeah, scissors aren't the right tools. I know. Done it for so long. Decent jacket on it. All right, so inside, usually there's a red and black, but you can see here some goofy pastel colors. The green and white, I assume, are the data lines, and I bet you this is red, and I don't know what color this used to be. But usually there would be a red and a black wire in here. We're going to go for it. using scissors for everything. Again, use the right tools, some pair of wire strippers. Once I heat this up, that rubber jacket will shrink back a little bit anyway. And then, like I said before, this pad here and one of these for negative. Again, I assume this weird color wire is the black. Come on, get over there. And then this will be the positive. A little too hot. And let's see if this works. So we'll plug this guy in. Actually, let's just see if it powers up or smokes. There's the little power light. Let's give our main monitor some power. And we'll see if it goes white. It is powered up, looks like. Yep, there it goes. Oh, perfect. So that goofy off-white was the black wire. And since I'm going wild with the hot glue today, put a little dot here. Okay, not my prettiest work, but again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible for you guys. Again, you can go above and beyond and wire this however you want. So now we have 5 volts for whatever we plug in this HDMI port. Again, in my case, it's this guy, so Chromecast. We'll give him 5 volts. And that glue's still setting up. Do it like this. Where is this going to end up? Guess we can go over here. I'm going to leave it loose. I may want to swap that out with something later. So I've got my HDMI plugged in, 5 volts. Ran. Need to find a home for the LED backlight driver board. Bring this back in. Let's see, it's going to be going like that. So really this board needs to probably go on this side somewhere. Does that give us enough to tape it up? I think it does. So this connector is going to end up here. And then I will use some of that tape to keep it out of this. Remember, we have to stay out of this square area. There's a big piece of metal that goes there. So I'm going to tape this up to the top. Again, when you want to use this material tape that we took out of here previously, this stuff won't get gooey and come off in the future. Sticks. It works really well for holding these wires in place. What it's made for. Okay, so we've got that taped up, and it's going to be feeding this. And again, I'm just going to, on my other one, I just laid a good 3M double-sided tape there. For this, going to use some of this industrial hot glue. And let that set up. Oops, almost pulled that. Probably should have disconnected that the whole time. There we go. And then we still have the video wire. Don't forget that painted pin 1 has a specific home. And you can usually leave this off, but you know what? Since we're soldering everything up, I'm just going to solder it up right here to one of these ground terminals. But again, if you're trying to skip the soldering stage and you ran your power cables up through a hole in the bottom and you're not doing any of this soldering stuff, and you're leaving the speakers off, you're okay with that. You know, you can just cut this wire off and leave it. Really just shielding to keep the screen from taking on interference. This short of a run, you'll be fine, and it's grounded here, and it also has some pads that carry that ground up to this metal main board. So I'm just going to tin this a little bit, add a little bit of fresh solder down here, and then that guy in place. So now I'm grounded there. Really, I should be able to throw it back together and power it up and see what happens. You can pretty this back up, put tape on it if you want. I'm going to leave it loose because I'm probably going to pull this back apart later. But you'll want to make sure that that cable is not on top of the speaker and not on top of that square spot here. So I'm just going to tuck it over here somewhere. You don't want it up here, and you don't. It would be wiser of me to tape it somewhere. But again, I'm just doing this temporarily. All snaps back together. Let's oh, I left the USB cable out for the touch screen, but many of you aren't using that. Give it some power. Remember, I left the buttons out and everything, so it's going to get no signal. There it goes. Once the Chromecast gets power and starts booting up, it'll do its thing. And there it is. You should be able to Chromecast to it, or use your Fire TV or whatever HDMI device you plugged in there. Raspberry Pis are pretty good. I had a Raspberry Pi and I installed Ubuntu operating system on it, and the touchscreen and everything worked. I was able to surf the net, do whatever. So that's a cool option for the more geeky people. Yeah, those of you that just have this monitor sitting on your bike, you canceled the service, you don't want to waste the money, and you just want something quick and dirty. I know that wasn't that quick, but it was dirty, and it gets you a screen with sound that you can cast whatever you want to it, or Fire TV or something like that. You know, you can go to YouTube and even do some of these biking videos or other exercise videos. And there are even apps that you can download, you know, for fitness that have a lot of the same features as the myxfitness stuff. You know, you can do specific bike rides and things like that on third-party apps that you find in the App Store, which I wish they would really unlock the Android device that was originally in this thing. We wouldn't have to go through all this and everything would just work. We could put our own apps on here. Really annoying to me that they lock it down because they're being petty, I guess. They want, or greedy maybe. They want your want you to keep paying for their service. But you already bought the bike and it wasn't cheap. And I'm sure you more than paid for the screen and the Android device. So not like they're giving it to us for cheap, expecting us to pay their monthly fee. So I don't get that, why they lock down this Android device. Hopefully there's some more geeky people out there than I and can get into this thing and either reload the OS from scratch, totally wipe it, and not deal with that remote management stuff. I don't know enough about Android OS or Android devices to get into these things with the, you know, the JTAG or anything like that and start hacking at these. I wish I did. This was my quick and dirty, relatively cheap. The board was really only about I think it was 25 bucks, the last one I ordered the other day to make this video. And you still get a usable screen. Like I said, if you do hook up this USB cable after trimming it down, like I showed you, you can run an HDMI cable and that USB out of this, and you can use this as a Windows touchscreen. Just leave them down below. And again, like I said before, if you guys can do me a favor and I don't know, right here somewhere, subscribe. Again, I know you guys hear that all the time on every YouTube channel, but really it's what lets me, I'm not making money off this. It's what lets me know that I should keep going with some of these geeky videos that I do. I hope that I'm helping in some way. All right. Thanks, guys.